Hey everyone, welcome back to the So Vintage series and the TARDIS Circle Skirt project. In part 3, we're going to actually be putting on the waistband. So we are pretty close to done. So I'm going to go ahead and hush up so you can actually see how to attach and create an elastic waistband for the skirt. With the right sides of the fabric together, you're going to pin all of the seams for all 4 pieces together until you have a piece that looks like this, like a big donut. With seam 1, seam 2, seam 3, seam 4. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put in a 1/2 inch seam allowance on here. So we're just going to stitch up all 4 of those seams using a straight seam, just your standard seam. So now that you have all the seams done, I do highly suggest before moving on to the elastic waistband, since this is meant to be pulled up over your hips, that you make sure that as it is now, you can pull it up over your hips. Now, if there is a considerable difference between your waist and your hip, you will want to add on extra inches based on the difference between the two. For each of our seams, I'm going to go ahead and take our pinking shears, and I'm just going to cut close to the seam. That way that will help with fraying. Once that's done, go ahead and open up your seam and seam that open. Now for the waist. What we're going to do is we're going to actually cut out a pattern piece for the waistband. Now, you can do this straight onto the fabric if you like. For demonstration purposes, it'd be nice to see it on the pattern piece. So what I did for the waistband is I took my waist, I added 2 inches for ease, and then I also added an additional inch for my seam allowance, because we're going to have a 1/2 inch seam allowance on this. That is for the length. So I take all of that, divide it all by 2, and that gives me 20.5 length. Then for the width, we made it 3 inches. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the size of your elastic. This is 1 inch, and you're going to times it by 2. So that's 2 inches. Then we want a 1/4 inch for our 1/4 inch for just room inside the casing. So that's 1/2 inch, because we're going to double that. Then we're also going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so double that, and we have 3. So 3 inches for our width of the waistband. Then you're going to go ahead, placing this end on the fold, and you're going to cut out your waistband. Now here we go. So now what we're going to do is putting the right sides together of our waistband. We are going to pin together that 3 inches. We're going to stitch it at 1/2 inch. We're going to need a space to be able to insert our elastic into. You're going to take your fabric pen and about, I'd say, a 1/2 inch in, give it a mark, because you don't want to do it right at the very edge, because the 1/2 inch is our seam allowance there. And then we're going to give that an inch. So that's 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch. So what we're going to do is when we're stitching, do not sew between those 2 marks. Simple as that, because that's going to allow us to ease in our elastic, just like that. So I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine and give that a 1/2 inch seam. Okay, so now what we're going to do, now that it's stitched together, there's the hole for our elastic up here. So on the opposite end, we are going to not only open up the seam allowance and press it open, but we're going to fold up the edge here a 1/4 inch all the way around, and you're just going to press that around the waistband. Okay, now that our waistband is all pressed, now on the waistband of the skirt, we're going to go ahead and place a straight stitch a 1/4 inch in on the seam allowance here. This is essentially just to keep the skirt from getting off kilter as we stitch it to the waistband. Now the other issue is that the waistband is a perfectly straight line and our skirt is not. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut out these small V's Now you don't want to cut all the way down to the stitch, but you want to cut these small V's out, because what that's going to do is allow this part of our skirt to lay flat while we stitch it to the waistband. So go ahead and do that every inch all the way around the skirt. Okay, now with the skirt right side out, what you're going to do is you're going to pick one of your quarter panels. I'm going to pick this one right here. My fingers are right where the seams are. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark this seam with a pin. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, fold the skirt in half until I find its opposite seam. And I'm going to place a pin in that as well. I'm going to take the seam of the waistband and I'm just going to fold this waistband in half. With it folded in half, that marks the center point of the waistband on this side. So I'm going to place a pin in that. So now I know where the center is on the other side. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that pinned center and I'm going to match it up with one of my pinned seams on the skirt. We're going to match it up right sides together, and we're going to match it up with the edge of the waistband that was not pressed under. Go to the other side of our skirt where we've pinned it as well, and we're going to match that seam up. You're going to just match up the rest of your skirt with the waistband and just pin that waistband all the way around. Our waistband is now pinned up on to our waist of the skirt, right sides together. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and stitch this together, and we're going to do that with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. There's our waistband so far. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this over to the iron once again, but this time we're going to fold over the waistband towards the inside of the skirt. Then you want this section that is pressed in to overlap that seam that's already there. I know it's hard to see because it's white. Then we are going to press a crisp edge on our line up here. Now it overlaps this seam here. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to stitch right in the well here of our seam. For your elastic, what you want to do is measure this to your waist with no ease, with no seam allowance. And then what I suggest doing is actually putting a pin in it and then wrapping it around your waist and checking its comfort level. Because one of the reasons to go with an elastic waistband on a skirt like this is comfort. So it feels like it is just a pajama. Then what I do for elastic, put a safety pin in the end, just like that. And then all I do is just slide that into the opening that we created. And then all you have to do is kind of scrunch that safety pin up and then pull the elastic through. Now you want to make sure that as you're doing this, that you don't twist up that elastic. All right, now what you're going to do when you get it out, you're going to overlap it by about an inch. And you're just going to go ahead and just give it a square stitch right across there. That will give it a nice sturdy stitch, so you don't have to worry about it pulling apart. Alright, and then you're just going to go ahead and you're going to slide all that elastic into the waistband of the skirt. Then, there we go. There. Now, I do suggest you go try it on to make sure before you stitch that close. You want to try this on, make sure that the elastic is in a correct position and it feels right before you make the final stitch closure. So that is it for part 3 of the TARDIS circle skirt. And next week in part 4, we're actually going to be finishing up the project, adding a great hem. Honestly, the hem is where your patience is really going to come in, but it pays off with a fabulous finished hem. So I hope you guys are really enjoying this series. As always, go ahead and check out my other videos. If you want to spend a little bit more time with me, you can check out the vlogs or last week's hair tutorial. And if you missed part 2 of the series. You can see that right there. And as always, if you want, let's chat in the comment section below if you have any questions, tips, suggestions you want to share. And if you are brand new to a Vintage Vanity, well, welcome. We are happy to have you here. And you can click that subscribe button. That's going to let you know when new videos are posted. That way you don't miss a minute of what goes on here. As always, go ahead and click that like, thumbs up button. Let me know you like this video, you like the series. It really helps to promote it. And I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you on Tuesday for the vlog. Bye!